Here around the second chain, up here in Ayers Bay, you got the little reefs. Again, fish are starting to show up on these reefs. Temperatures are starting to climb. This past Memorial Day weekend, our temperatures, Saturday and Sunday, were hovering in the 90s, low 90s. A lot of wind, so a lot of these areas were difficult to fish on a couple of days. That Saturday and Sunday were real difficult as far as the wind goes because it was cranking pretty good for the most part. Low 20s in areas. So if you were in an open bay area, you were having to probably some blown out areas, some muddy water that you had to contend with. But here in Ayers, again around the second chain, this area here, Ayers Dugout, the Ayers Reef area, just kind of work those areas, spend a little time on those. Just again prospecting, just seeing when these fish are really going to show up on it. Temperature wise, if it's going to continue to stay in the upper 80s, low 90s, and the water temp's going to continue to hover around the low 80s, mid 80s, these fish are going to be on the reefs really soon, if not majority somewhere. Again, that's just kind of what I'm prospecting in around this. You've got a couple little shell pads that are here off. And of course, we're just working shoreline and Ayers. Haven't been up in Ayers in a while, but we just wanted to see if that grass is starting to come back, starting to show up. And it is slowly but surely. It's not just massive like it was, probably back in 17, 18. Lots of grass on it. It was a spectacular shoreline all the way back down to Panther. And that grass died off over time, so with that pretty soon. So again, we're seeing that. We're finding fish, trout specifically, that are on top of that grass. Like I say, these fish are starting to push up on grass beds, getting ready to lay eggs if they're not already laying eggs. Like I say, we're finding fish that's got eggs that are in them. So this is going to be a trend that's going to be taking place probably well into June. Like I say, we're, week and a half out, 2 weeks at the most from June. So summertime is like right here. Temperatures are indicating that summertime is going to be here real soon. So these are the types of areas that you're really going to want to target. We'll try to stay away now, transition into the hard pack, grass, shell bars, shell reefs, shell pads. Those are the things that we're really, really wanting to target. We get back here in some of the back lakes. We've had a couple of days where we could get back in here and work those, but a lot of it's been pretty shallow. Our water levels have been pretty good for the most part, but some of this is just we need to get out of the wind. So if we're going to fish up in that, we like to get into just for protection and just locate some fish. But a lot of that's squishy, muddy background, back lakes, scattered shell in there, but there's plenty of grass. But the water temps are not terrible, and you could still find some fish that are back in there. But your better stuff is all hard pack that's out here on these edges, on the shoreline, around to the point. Back in here as you head toward Ayers Dugout, and then you get back into some harder shell in that type of area. And that's where the fish are kind of starting to show up. Not in big numbers, but we're finding them there. So that's just kind of a heads up type of thing for you, that you want to transition your structure as we're moving forward. That'll be the areas that you're really going to want to be over as we get into the summertime pattern, that hard packed grass and shell. So those will be your main areas. So this past week, outside of being, windy for the most part on some of the days, a couple of days we got, pretty good, a little reprieve. It wasn't terrible. But we were, sticking with our smaller baits because we're in our transition days. And when those happens, you get what I call the wild card days. You get all kinds of different types of bites. And a couple of our days, the bites weren't just spectacular at all. You had to really work and grind to make those fish want to eat. So we stuck with a lot of burner shad stuff, just like we did back in the big moon phase. New moon is not far away, which should increase our bite opportunities and catch a few more fish. But, this past week, headed into the Memorial Day weekend, lots of people that were on the water on Saturday. Few less people on Sunday, not even that on Monday. So Saturday was the big day for the majority of people. So you really had to have a little grace and patience in areas that you fish, because there's just a lot of people that run in a lot of places and probably help scatter and fish. So if your catching day on Saturday was difficult, that's the main reason why. But if you could find a little area that was a little secluded, maybe a little clean water, the burner shad in the Big Papa, Twisted Tea, White Ice, Bone Diamond, Watermelon Red, Purple Rain. Those flavors did really well for us. The original size Watermelon Red specifically. Easy Money was another one that was really good for us once you found some clean water. Again, Bone Diamond, White Ice in the original size as well did pretty well for us. The Knock and Tell mainly was the Greenback. Did good for us. Mirror Little John's, Watermelon Red, and the Truth in the dirtier water. We did pretty good with that. Then we threw some of the Pavlure, the 5-inch rat tail that they have, and a flavor that we did with those. And those were the things that really did well for us this past week, and just different scenarios. Nothing was really consistent for the most part. But all those baits combined on particular days, we caught fish across the board at various times with those specific baits and those specific colors and up in these areas here. So sometimes you just have to have that variance of box as far as color and size and profile. Just kind of depends on what your bite's doing. Again, had a lot of big winds as we got into the weekend time frame. But once you kind of got into a little bit cleaner water and found that little activity, you were able to locate and find some fish. We were, mainly majors and minors were our main focus in and around those time frames. Had to really grind in between those bite frames, but once we got into them, we were able to catch a few more fish than what we had been outside of that time frame. So anyhow, we got looks like a pretty decent upcoming week, maybe some possibility of some rain toward the end of the week, but we'll see how that all transpires. Here on Quarantine Shoreline, I don't particularly spend a lot of time on this particular shoreline, but again, with the water temps and the air temps being what they've been, this is one of those prospecting days. Let's see if some fish are starting to show up in these particular areas. So, you got great hard packed bottom, which is conducive to this time of year moving forward. You got scattered shell that's in there. You got some grass patches in there. You got different type of structure that kind of works yourself all the way back around here toward the Morris Cummings or Corpus Christi mouth, Bayou area, this whole spot lock down here. All that area there has not been terrible. Like I say, I think we just spent one day, pretty sure we spent just one day on this particular shoreline just to kind of see what was happening. Throwing the same baits, what I was mentioning earlier, but we spent a little time on it. We just kind of worked back and forth in that, and it's great protection too, wind-wise, especially with that southeastern breeze. It kind of blows right down, so it kind of sets up for you, and you're somewhat protected. You got deep water access; it's right there. A lot of dolphins were working off the edges out there, and we didn't catch any redfish, but we did catch some decent trout up and down the shoreline. But again, this is going to be a trend that's going to continue to get better as we get closer and closer into the summertime pattern, which in my opinion, the summertime pattern's already starting to click and starting to move into that. So we're trying to transition away from more really muddy bottoms, which is typically going to hold heat more. So that's why it's great during the winter times, but during the summer times, not so much. Can you catch fish still in those areas? Yes. But would those fish rather be over something a little bit more comfortable temperature-wise? Yes. They're not too much different than we are as far as we want to be comfortable. So that said, this area over here on the super flat area, you've got all the great kind of bottom that you want. You've got grass, you've got potholes, you've got a little bit squishy mud here and there, but it's not terrible. You got enough hard pack around that in the grass. In all these areas here, North Pass, this area here off the point, and you've got deeper water access to those fish are holding out over the top of that kind of stuff. So again, you got a lot of these trout that are pushing up on grass, wanting to lay eggs and getting to that stuff done. So you still have an outside shot, depending on where you fish, that you may possibly catch you a really nice quality fish. I'm going to say, upper 20s, 25 to 28. And then she's still going to be heavy because she's still got eggs in her, because we're seeing that a lot with the younger fish. The 16s to 19s, a lot of those are still fat-bellied. And it's not just from eating this, because they still got a lot of eggs that are in them. So you still have a good possibility that you can catch one. But as each week passes, that possibility of that really heavy fish is going to slide away as they begin to lay eggs. And once that happens, your weight goes away, but you still have a quality fish as far as the length of her she goes. So again, this is another area on this grass edge on the drops out here. There's a particular little spot back here. It's really nice and protected from that southeast breeze, so if you can get to it with not a problem, you know, you've got deeper water that's out here that you can fish, and those fish will kind of slide off of that kind of area and get back into some of this area here as you work back toward Blind Pass and the ranch house. Like I say, we spend a lot of time around mud here. Again, these fish are starting to show up on those types of areas, and it's not going to do anything but get better for you. Same baits in this area. The Pav lures, we threw the 5-inch mainly in the rat tail in assorted colors. It's kind of based on what the water clarity was. We're throwing a darker bait if we had a little bit cleaner water, a little bit more translucent. But in the down south, you know, the Purple Rain, Twisted Tea, Big Papa. Big Papa did, from what I remember, did pretty well, standing out in kind of a multi-flavor water, you know, whether it was stained or off color and a little bit clean. It was pretty versatile as far as fishing multiple different. So that's the one that kind of, the Mirror Lure did really well. It's still, if you haven't got that bait in your box, man, pick you up a bag of those. Are really, it's a quality bait. And again, it's a darting style bait, and it has its place. So, and it's been pretty well, especially in these heavy wind days where it's kind of stained that water up, so it kind of stands out for you. But still, you can fish it in that cleaner water as well. And then, of course, the knock and tail again, the greenback did very good for us. Down south, both the burner shad and the original size in those multiple flavors did pretty good. Sprinkled in the double D here and there, and it was just a matter of what you really wanted to throw as far as color goes, based on what was going on with that. You had to just pick the right area. So, like I said, we had a different tides up and down the week. So we had some days we had some pretty decent tides, other days a little bit lower tides. So it just kind of depended on what estuary you were fishing in. And again, majors and minors were the main thing. Ton of bait. Oh my goodness, there's tons of bait up and down in all these shorelines and estuaries. That is not a problem whatsoever. So just get in around that, and you'll find your predator fish. And just go to work, man. Just be patient out there. Your new moon is coming. All right. Well, so we had the bigger winds toward the end of the weekend. So we tried to hit this area earlier in the week when it wasn't quite as bad. It was around 10 to 12 when we worked Newcomb. All the structure that you want. You got grass in here, hard packed in here. Every once in a while you'll come off a little bit squishy bottom, but majority of it's pretty hard packed, and you got a lot of undulation that's in there. So you got potholes, you got humps, you got drop-offs, you got edges. So it really sets up well. And when you got a southeast breeze, it's going to be pretty much a windward shoreline with the amount of bait that's been blown in here. So we just spent our time on the day that we spent this and just worked up and down it. Really, really methodical. I believe I was throwing a topwater bait. And the topwater bait action has been kind of hit or miss. But when you start to get a lot of swirls and blow-ups and slaps, it's a great indicator to let you know that you got fish that are hanging in there, just not really want to be aggressive enough, just because they say we're in the transition moon wild card days. We had more days that were their fish where it was, average or a little bit below average catching-wise. So we really had to take that in consideration. So the day that we decided to fish this particular spot, this location, I was pretty well going to throw the topwater bait and just have people that were close, not too far away, about 10, 15 feet away, and just tell them to watch. Just say, man, you see slaps or swirls on that topwater bait, chunk in there right behind it and see if you get the opportunities, and that was the case. They were not aggressive as far as attacking the bait. It kind of more agitated them more than anything else to just kind of get away from it. But once you put a bait down in front of their nose that was a little bit below the water surface, they were willing to eat it. So from that standpoint, that particular technique for us paid off for us on the day that we fished up in here. We just, like I say, we fished shoreline because there was enough water, and again with the windward shoreline, it was blowing more water into it, so it allowed us to fish a little bit shallower than typically that you would normally. And then you can just kind of work down it like that. Like I say, once the action on the topwater kind of went away, as far as them paying attention to it, we just strictly stayed with our soft plastics and just kind of worked found the potholes, found the edges. Again, fish are pushing up over grass. They're pushing up on the edges of that grass. So that was what our target was. And again, the day that we fished this, it was pretty productive for the most part. Mainly around the major. It was an early morning major, or excuse me, a mid-morning major, because the miners were pretty early in the morning. So we just got one bite frame before we got off the water. And we're, like I say, and the temperatures are starting to be a factor as well. So something you need to get in there. If you're getting your early morning bite, your temperatures are still pretty manageable. But as you get toward the midday and you get a little bit more sunshine on there, those temps are starting to rise up. And if you're going to fish in the afternoon, it's really going to start to rise up. And that's not going to do anything but get more and more prevalent as we get into June and July. So that's why we really want to focus on these areas, paying attention to your shell bars. If you're able to be out on the water this upcoming week, go hit you a shell bar somewhere that if you're familiar with, and just see whether you're fishing out of the boat drifting it, or if you're going to be able to jump out and weight it no matter where that's at. Because the lap reef, all this used to be all connected in here, so you've got little areas that are here off of it, not too far, and you can just kind of find those on your graph, your GPS, and just kind of work in and around those types of areas, up and down Newcomb here. Like I say, you can fish this thing all the way to the causeway if you want to. That's the beauty of that. So if you want to walk in wade right there, which I've done before, you can walk that thing all the way to the point and back, and that's an easy 5 or 6 hour wade with no problem. So just something to pay attention to this upcoming week as it happens. We're going to have if everything holds true weather-wise, we're going to have a little bit possibility of rain, but that's going to bring in low pressures, and that's going to increase your bite on a particular day depending on what day that rain does happen. So anyway, majors and minors, your big thing. You got plenty of bait working there. Just take your time, work, and you'll find your fish laying up in there.